Off Korea's east coast, a few hundred meters from shore, there is a rock in the sea. Waves have broken over it for 13 centuries. On a chart it's nothing. A reef. Koreans call it Daewangum, the rock of the great king, because by tradition beneath those waves lie the ashes of a king who refused an ordinary tomb. He asked to stay in the water, so he could become a dragon and go on guarding his kingdom even in death. A king who guards his kingdom even in death. A legend like that grows from somewhere. This one grew from a war. Last episode ended at a gate in Pyongyang, opened from the inside. Goguryeo was gone. Baekje was gone. 2 winners were left on the peninsula, the kingdom of Silla and the superpower it had invited in, Tang China. Hold this question: what do you do when the empire you invited to win your war decides to keep your country? Rewind to the deal. In 648, Silla's Kim Chunchu had sailed to the Tang court and struck the bargain of the century, Tang's armies against Silla's enemies, and afterward, by the understanding Silla's own chronicle records, the land south of Pyongyang would be Silla's. Baekje fell in 660, Goguryeo in 668, and then, instead of handing anything over, the empire began drawing its own map. Watch it happen on paper. Over Old Baekje, a Tang commandery, from 660. Over Old Goguryeo, the Andong protectorate pacify the east. Seated in Pyongyang, the land carved into 9 commanderies, 42 prefectures, 100 counties, most telling of all. In 663, Tang had filed Silla itself, intact, undefeated, sovereign as the Goguryeo Great Commandery, its king listed as a Tang governor. From Chang'an, routine imperial bookkeeping. From Silla's throne room, one reading, the ally had come to stay. The man reading those documents was King Munmu, son of Kim Chunchu, the diplomat who built the alliance, nephew of Kim Yusin, the general who made it work. He fought at Baekje's fall as crown prince, took the throne mid-war in 661, finished Goguryeo in 668. Everything he had, the alliance had built, and everything it promised it was now withholding. He had to choose, swallow it, or fight the most powerful empire on earth. The North forced the issue. Within a year, the occupation was on fire, revolts sweeping the old Goguryeo lands through 669 and 670. In the Daedong Valley, a former Goguryeo officer named Mojam raised the banner of restoration and gave it a crown. A survivor of the royal house named Anseung, son, nephew, or grandson of the last king. The sources never agree. It didn't matter. He was royal blood. 2 years after Goguryeo died, there was a Goguryeo king again. Tang expected its ally to help stamp the fire out. Munmu did the opposite. In the 8th month of 670, Silla formally recognized Anseung as king of Goguryeo, sheltering the very restoration Silla had spent generations fighting. Call it what it was, not sentiment, strategy. Every rebel in the north was now a Tang problem, not a Silla problem. Yesterday's enemies had just become today's shield. And Silla did not wait to be attacked. Early in 670, before the empire's grip could harden, the Silla general Sol Ou and the Goguryeo revival commander Goyoungmu crossed the Yalu River together, 20,000 men by the traditional count, and struck a Tang stronghold in Liaodong. Hear that clearly. A Korean force hitting the empire on the empire's side of the river. The Silla-Tang War had begun, and Silla swung first. The restoration didn't survive its own success. Under Tang pressure the movement split, and Anseung, the king Mojam had crowned, had Mojam killed, then fled south into Silla's protection. If that pattern sounds familiar, it should. Last episode, it's how kingdoms died. But Silla's cold ledger read differently. Munmu now held a Goguryeo king in his pocket. Next he reached for the Baekje lands. While the north absorbed Tang's attention, Silla moved through Old Baekje garrison by garrison. By 671 the empire's administration was swept from the Baekje heartland, and the land reorganized as a Silla province, planted on the fallen capital itself, and the king went further than occupation. Former Baekje people began receiving official rank inside Silla. Munmu wasn't just taking the defeated kingdom's land, he was recruiting its people. Then the empire punched back. From 672 the northern front turned brutal. At Baeksusan on the Hiroha River, Silla and its Goguryeo allies were beaten and beaten again. At a fortress called Seokmun, a Silla army was routed outright. This is the stretch the victory monuments skip. For 3 years mid-war, Silla was mostly losing. Seokmun reached into Silla's greatest family. Kim Yusin, architect of every unification campaign, now nearly 80, had a son on that field, Wansel. The son tried to die fighting. A retainer dragged him away alive. To the father, only one outcome was forgivable. A general's son wins or dies. He demanded his own son's execution. King Munmu refused, so the old man cast Wansel out of the family and never saw him again. Remember the name. He never got the chance to relent. In the summer of 673, mid-war, the empire undefeated, Kim Yusin died at 79. Munmu buried his uncle with royal honors and fought on without him. The man Korean memory credits with unification never lived to see the peninsula secured. The war passed to a younger generation, and Tang was about to raise the stakes, from armies to thrones. In 674, the Tang Emperor Gaozong reached for a weapon no army carries. He stripped Munmu of his titles on paper and proclaimed a new king of Silla, Munmu's own brother, Kim Inmun, a prince who had served the alliance at the Tang court all his career. An army marched east to install him. First the empire filed Silla as a province, now it appointed its king, brother against brother by imperial decree. Munmu's answer is the most cold-blooded diplomacy in this series. He retitled his Goguryeo client Anseung king of Boduk. He kept fighting, and he apologized. In 675, a Silla embassy brought the Tang court a formal apology, with tribute. Gaozong offered a way to save face, restored Munmu's titles. Kim Inmun, who by every account never wanted it, turned back mid-journey. King for 0 days, tribute was the era's diplomatic grammar. Munmu used it as a weapon. A bow, not a surrender. The fighting never stopped. That same year, the war's largest Tang force sat camped deep inside the peninsula. It sat at a fortress called Seokmun. The site still debated, likely in the hills north of today's Seoul. The Samguk Sagi, Korea's 12th century chronicle, counts the Tang army there at 200,000. Historians read that as inflation, likely everything Tang committed to the whole war. The camp itself may have held closer to 40,000, but the fact stands, the greatest concentration of imperial force left on Korean soil. In the 9th month of 675, Silla attacked it. Look at who marched. Silla regulars, convicts amnestied to fight, and Goguryeo and Baekje refugees, soldiers of the kingdoms Silla helped destroy. This series keeps one refrain, defeated and then rebuilt. At Seokmun it stopped being a metaphor. The defeated rebuilt into an army. They broke the camp. The chronicles tally: 6,047 cavalry killed, 30,380 horses taken, and in that host rode Wansel the disowned son, fighting his way back to a name. Tang's land offensive never recovered. One road into Korea remained. The sea. Tang's commander there was Shui Rengui, a celebrated general, and pointedly the first governor Tang installed over occupied Pyongyang. His push on a Silla River fortress was thrown back, losing ships and horses by the record. In the 11th month of 676 his fleet came down the west coast, to the mouth of the Jiam River inside the old Baekje land Silla now held, a place called Jaibalpo. The man waiting was no legend. Saduk, a mid-ranking Silla officer. The chronicle barely pauses on his name. He lost the opening engagement, then he refused to lose another. A running fight along the estuary. 22 clashes by the Samguk Sagi's count, a reported 4,000 enemy dead, and the Tang fleet beaten back from the coast. The last major battle of the war, the empire's road into Korea by land and now by sea, was closed. Hold two truths at once: Silla's victories were real. So was the empire's arithmetic. Since 670, Tang had been bleeding on the far side of Asia. A rising Tibetan empire had crushed a Tang army at Defeichuan and overrun its western garrisons. Chang'an waged a war on two fronts, and chose the other one. In 676, Tang pulled its main forces out and moved the Andong Protectorate off the peninsula to Liaodong. No surrender, no treaty to quote, just the fact: the empire went home. For the first time in recorded history, the core of the Korean peninsula stood under one Korean state, everything south of a line from the Daedong River, past Pyongyang, to Wonsan Bay. Later ages would call it Unified Silla. The smallest of the three kingdoms had outlasted them all, and made a superpower's occupation cost more than it paid. But look north of that line. Most of Goguryeo, the vast northern homeland, lies outside it. Hold that thought. Munmu lived 5 more years, rebuilding a kingdom worn down by war. He died in 681. His will, preserved in the chronicle, asked for austerity. No vast mound, a frugal cremation. A wartime economy kept to the last. Then tradition adds the part Koreans remember, that he asked to rest in the East Sea, to rise as a dragon and guard Silla against invaders. His son laid him at the rock where we began, Daewangam. So stand at that rock and ask the question we owe you. Did Silla truly unify Korea? Koreans still argue it, honestly on both sides. Yes, For the first time, one Korean state held the peninsula's core, and everything later called Korea descends through it. And no, not completely, a verdict pressed a century ago by a famous nationalist historian. Most of the old map, Goguryeo homeland, was left outside. Some historians say the first full unification came centuries later. We won't settle what they haven't. But notice where the question points, north. Because the north did not stay empty. In 698, 30 years after Goguryeo fall, a Goguryeo-descended general named Dae-Joyong raised a new state on the old northern lands, its name Balhae. The peninsula's story became two stories, Silla in the south, Balhae in the north. An era many historians now call the northern and southern states. Last episode we promised. Goguryeo didn't end, it moved. Next time we follow it north, to the kingdom that rose from the ruins. This was episode 6 of Untold Korea. Subscribe.